Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today. This video is going to be a little bit of a reading update from me. I'm going to clear out my TBR shelf. I'm going to look at the books I purchased most recently at the end of 2021. I'm going to look at the books I currently have out from the library, and I'm also going to talk about the books I'm currently reading. So I was just thinking in the last few days that I don't really think that I had a really great start reading-wise this year yet, because I realized my TBR shelf is such a mess and it's filled with leftover books from old TBR lists. I just crammed in there books that I have out from the library that I want to read, and just everything is just a mess, and it's just like I need to clear my head so I can mentally switch to 2022 when it comes to my reading. So I pulled all of those books down from that shelf, and yes, I just need to decide whether I want to focus on them now or I'm just going to put them back on my shelf behind me here and just start fresh, because I feel like I'm in a slump in a way. I'm in the middle of 3 books currently, so let's just start with those. Then I'm gonna go through the books I have on my TBR shelf and kind of sort through and decide what I want to read. And then at the end, I will go through the books I bought at the end of last year. So they're all next to me here on the table. I have my currently reading on my lap here, so I'm surrounded by books. It's perfect. So let's just get through these books. And the first book I'm currently in the middle of is Passing by Nella Larsen. I have started this book quite like in the beginning of December, and I'm not sure why I haven't finished it yet. I think I've been reading like a chapter at a time. It's like quite an episodic book and quite short, so I don't have a lot left, but I will definitely finish this sooner rather than later and then just watch the movie. The next book I'm currently in the middle of and I'm halfway through is The Winter Palace by Eva Stachniak, and this is about the rise to power of Catherine the Great of Russia. A story told through the eyes of this servant woman / spy in the palace. I haven't read large chunks of it at the same time, so I've been picking it up here and there, and it's taking me some time to get through it. But every time I'm in this world, I'm so captivated by the palace, by the politics, and by the depictions of how they lived in the Winter Palace at that time. And you know, it feels really like this palace, the Winter Palace, is like really a character in this story. And I'm really interested to see where this is going. I don't know a lot about Russian history, so for me, it's still an interesting story. But also, if you like series like The Great, I think you will definitely enjoy this one as well. Even though it's kind of like the same story, I feel like maybe this is more steeped into actual historical events, and it's more accurate historically, and also it's much more real, whereas The Great is like a really like comedy and a little bit romanticized. Then I have 2 audiobooks I'm currently listening to, and one of them is The Witches of New York by Amy McKay, and I've picked this up because of the title. It is about witches, and I'm really interested in books about witches, so I've been reading them on and off these past couple of years. And this is also interesting for me because it's set in the 1880s in New York. So it is some 200 years after the Salem witch trials, and in this world, women can start to maybe openly admit to practicing witchcraft again and be different, I guess. So the story is about these 3 women, these 3 witches who work and have this tea shop in New York where they help other women. And one of them is like reads cards, the other one is truly a witch, one of them can see things no one can see, so they all have these different abilities. And then I'm not sure what else happens, but I think it sounds really interesting. I'm just at the part where the third witch comes into the picture, and at the same time there's like a larger movement of really religious movement within the church who are really outspoken against women who practice these sort of things like magic, but just women in general who today maybe they would be viewed as just simply doctors or nurses, someone who is trying to help other people. But I guess at that time it wasn't viewed with such positive light. So I'm excited to see where this is going because I have really no idea. And so far I'm really enjoying it. I enjoy being in this world and I enjoy listening to this audiobook. I think I just need to pick it up a little bit more often and then just really immerse myself, because as I said, I'm really quite at the start. And because yesterday I was feeling like picking up something new, I randomly picked up The Valiant by Leslie Livingston, which is book 1 in a series about this young girl who's a Celt and her father is a king. And her father wants to force her into this arranged marriage to actually the brother of the man she loves. So she flees, and while on the run, someone captures her and takes her as a slave, and then I think she's sold into slavery and she becomes like a gladiator. It is set in the Roman times and in the Roman Empire at the time of Caesar. So Caesar is her enemy because at some point Caesar came to her lands and conquered it, and because of that I think her sister died, so she really wants to take revenge on Caesar as well. So I don't know, I think it's such a unique story. I haven't read a lot of fantasy books. I mean, this sounds more like historical fiction in a way, but it has some fantasy in it. So I'm not sure, but I think it's a mix of both. And I haven't read a lot of stories like this, and it sounds really interesting. So I can't wait to see where it goes. Then I have a few books here which I have put on various TBRs these past 3 months or so, which I haven't gotten to yet, and they've been clogging my TBR shelves. So I don't know whether I should put them back on my shelves behind me or just read them. Maybe I'll focus on reading the 2 I had on my Victober TBR, Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy and Elizabeth Gaskell's Mary Barton, because classics, and I remember reading classics at the beginning of 2021 and I had such a great time, and I feel like reading classics is a great way for me to kickstart my 2022 reading. So yeah, let me know which one of these I should pick up first. I have seen movie adaptations of this one, so I kind of know the story, so maybe this one is more appealing, but let me know if you have read them and what do you think? Then I have one which is a remnant from my November nonfiction November TBR, which is White Fragility. Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Race by Robin DiAngelo. And I have read, not that much, 15 pages of this one. And I remember saying at that time that this is such a short book, I can easily read it in November. Right, I think November was one of the months when I read the least amount of books, and if I remember correctly, I only read 3 books in November, so no wonder I haven't finished this one. And then also for November, actually, I had The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett on my TBR. I've been meaning to read this together with Passing, and I can still do that since I'm in the middle of reading Passing, so maybe I should pick this one up next. And now that I'm talking about these books, I feel like a TBR forming in my head. So this was a good idea. I have one book from my December TBR which I haven't read yet, and that is Kate Atkinson's Life After Life. Now, this is such a chunky book because it's a hardback, and I normally don't read hardbacks, but I just love the cover of this. And this one is also a Danish copy, so I'm pretty sure if I start this, it's gonna take me quite a long time to finish it, since I normally don't read books in Danish. But I heard mixed things about this book, but I think for the most part I heard positive things, and I'm excited to get to this. While it's still cold outside, I mean, yeah, I think I can manage. But let's see. I'm actually quite happy that it went so well with my winter TBR books, because I'm currently reading The Winter Palace, and other than that, I think I read most of the books I had on that TBR, so that doesn't really happen so often for me. So yay, I guess. Okay, let's see what's next. I'm gonna take the books I have picked up for different countries for the Invisible Cities project, and I have quite a few here. So another great stack, and yeah, it's just crazy. Some of these are from the library, 3, so maybe I will focus on these first. So let's see. And the first one is the book I picked up for Sierra Leone, and it is a memoir called A Long Way Home by Ismael Beah, and it is subtitled Memoirs of a Boy Soldier. So I don't think I need to say much more than that. It's a title which really reveals what this is going to be about. On the quote here on the cover, it says, makes you wonder how anyone comes through such horror with his humanity and sanity intact. Ismael Beah seems to prove it can happen. I think it's gonna be a hard read, but a great one. So I really love memoirs, and I think this is gonna be a pretty insightful view into what happened in Sierra Leone in the 1990s, and particularly what happened to the author of this book and how he escaped through those horrors, and how his life ended up. Next, I have a book in Danish because I couldn't find it in English, and it is a book I picked up for French Guinea, and it is The Dark Child by Kamara Lay. This is like a type of memoir, I believe. I'm not sure. Maybe it's inspired by his life, but it is a book in which he writes about growing up in this very small French Guinean village, which was very, very steeped in tradition. His mother has supernatural powers, and his father was the village goldsmith, so he comes from like a kind of a privileged background in that village. And then I think this book is about how he struggles to choose between that life and a life in a bigger city with like going to study, so like the academic life, I would say, which is really contrasting to that life, village life he grew up in. I think this is set in like the 1900s, early 1900s, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not sure how I'm gonna get on with this, being kind of like a classic and reading it in Danish. I think I read a few pages already, and it doesn't seem like it's very hard to read for me. So I don't know, let's see how it will go. But it's kind of a short one, so I should be able to get to this before I need to take it back to the library. Then I have the book I want to read for Colombia, and it is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I have such a little bit of a little history with this book since I picked it up first last year, because first I wanted to listen to it, and I think it works for me in audio format, and then I picked up the book and I read only 60 pages and I put it down. So maybe I just need to give myself some time and just to slow down and to truly be able to immerse myself in this book, which is kind of like a story of this family and this really remote village. And I'm not sure I understand yet where the title comes from, but it's gonna come. It's like a classic for a reason, so I guess I need to prioritize it at some point soon. Then I have a book I picked up for China, and it is Mo Yan's Red Sorghum. I have picked this up. I had this on my shelf for many years, and I have this in Romanian. And every time I want to pick it up, I realize that I haven't read in Romanian in quite a while, and this is kind of, feels like a heavy literary novel. Or maybe it's just my rusty Romanian, I'm not sure, but I never seem to be able to get past the first 30-40 pages or so. So again, maybe I just need to realize that this is gonna take me a long time. But I feel like also if I take too long breaks between picking this up, I'm just forgetting what I read, since I don't read so much of it at a time. I don't know, I just need to form like a strategic way of approaching this book somehow. But this is set in the 1930s in China when it is invaded by Japanese, and it follows these 3 generations of this family, and it follows also the rebellion against and the uprising against occupiers. So it's like a beautiful family saga set in this really turbulent times in China. And I think it's also, there was a movie made from this called also The Red Shogun, which won an Oscar at some point. So maybe I should watch the movie, or maybe not. I think I should just focus on the book first. But yeah, just take it slow. But if you have any other books by a Chinese author for the Invisible Cities project, please let me know, because I really don't know whether I should just leave this for now and just pick up another book for the project. And speaking of Romanian books, the next book I picked up for Romania, and it is Pelinul Negru by Ioana Nicolae. So this is a Romanian book, and I'm going to read it in Romanian, of course. But I'm not sure how to translate this title into English, because Google translates it to Black Wormwood. Let me know if that means anything to you, because it doesn't mean anything to me. But basically this is a story about this young girl who has lived very close and was born right after the disaster of Chernobyl in 1986. And of course, there are consequences, because I think just like the author, so maybe it's a bit autobiographical in one way, but the author also says here that she felt the consequences of the Chernobyl disaster. And if you know a little bit of Europe, and you have the map of Europe in front of you, you will know that Romania is neighbor to Ukraine. And of course, some places in Romania, maybe the whole of that area, felt the consequences of the Chernobyl disaster a bit more than, a bit places further away, I guess, because of the radioactivity. And this is exactly the story of this young girl and her life. When she was born right after that nuclear disaster. So it's gonna be a hard read, but I'm excited to get to it, because last year I went home through a different route from Denmark. I normally go from Copenhagen to Budapest, because I live so close to the Romanian border that I just take like a bus from Budapest and just travel home. It's 5 hours by bus, so it's a long trip. And last year I was like, let's avoid that long bus tour with Corona and everything. So instead, I live in Copenhagen, so I went to Malmö in Sweden. There's an airport there quite close from here. And then from there I could travel to Cluj, which is the city where I lived and I went to university in Romania. And from there, it's just an easier for me to get home, like a 2-hour bus. So it's as you can see, it's not easy for me to go home. It's quite the travel experience every time. But this way, last year, I was able to spend some time in the city where I studied for uni, and it was so nice to go back there. And of course, the first thing I always do is go to the bookstores, and I picked up some books in Romanian. So I have a few on my shelves. I'm hoping to get to them this year, but I think this one is the one I decided to pick up for the Invisible Cities project, so I hope it's gonna be good. And it's also gonna be nice for me to just dive back into Romanian literature, because I haven't been reading any Romanian literature since I went to school and I had to read for school, I guess. And then the last pile I have is the pile of books I bought in December. And I remember feeling really like going out and just buying some books. It was weird because I had some gift cards for the bookstore, but I didn't use them. So I was like, maybe I'll leave those for 2022, because I was thinking for 2022 of not buying any books. And I guess if you just use a gift card, it doesn't really count as buying books. So, it was a really strategic move from my part, I think. I don't know. But I bought these 4 books. And first I'm going to mention Dune Messiah So I just finished Dune in December, and I don't want to wait too long for the second book because I think this is set right after the first one, and it's also quite short. So I'm excited to see what's gonna happen in this world, because I really enjoyed all the politics and the world building, and there's just unique setting on that planet with the worms and the desert. So it's gonna be interesting to dive back in that world. The next one I picked up was Ian McEwan's Machines Like Me. I've been meaning to pick up another Ian McEwan ever since I read and really enjoyed Atonement. I think that book, even though the first part, it was such slow paced and so difficult to get through, because it details like the events of one afternoon in like 200 pages. But I think it was so masterfully done, and the second part was so heartbreaking that I still think about it. And ever since, I've been meaning to pick up more of his books, and they're quite popular every time they come out. And then last year, I think in December 2021, I read Kazuo Ishiguro's newest book, Clara and the Sun, which is about an artificial intelligence. So when I went to this bookstore, I saw this book, and this is also about a synthetic human, an android, and a love triangle. So I don't know, I feel like it's the perfect time to pick this up. I don't know why I waited so long, but it's like, you know, sometimes when you go to the bookstore and you have all these books around you, and you know that you're gonna pick them up at some point, but it's just not the right time. And this time it was this book's time, I guess. I don't know, because I've been eyeing it for such a long time. So this time it came home with me. Then I have Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and this is subtitled Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. And I've only heard amazing things about this book. My only question now, that since I bought the physical copy, should I listen to the audiobook, which is also available at the library? So I feel like I mean, it's nice to have it in physical form, but let's see. If I try reading it and it just feels like it's taking me a long time, maybe I'll pick up the audiobook. And the last book I picked up in a secondhand store, and it is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. And this feels like it hasn't even been read. It's completely new. I mean, of course, the edges are yellow, so it's been on a bookshelf for some time, but I don't think anyone read this. So it was a pretty good deal for me, especially because I've read Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield and absolutely loved it. It was a historical fiction, and I believe this one is as well. And this is about this house which stands abandoned and forgotten, where this family lived with manipulative Isabel and Charlie, her brutal and dangerous brother, and the wild, untamed twins, Emmeline and Adeline. But the house conceals a chilling secret whose impact still resonates. Now, I'm sure this isn't meant to be a horror, because when I think about horror and twins, I have this scene from The Shining in my mind, which is a novel I could never read, nor the movie I could ever watch, because it's just so scary. But I don't know what's the thing about twins in horrors. I don't know, but I'm sure I'm gonna love this, because again, I've only heard amazing reviews on BookTube, and Diane Setterfield is such an amazing author. So I think I'm gonna read it as well at some point. But again, I have so many great historical fiction on my shelves here, so when will I get to it? I don't know. But 2022 is gonna be the year when I focus on reading my own books. Hence, and this one as well, since it's the newest one I bought, I don't know. But yeah, let's see how it goes. Let me know which of these you think I should focus on first. I think, of course, I will have to read the books from the library, because I need to return those. But other than that, if you have read any of these and you loved it, please let me know so I can maybe prioritize it, because there's so many here and they all sound great. So I already feel like this exercise of cleaning my TBR shelf helped me, because it just reminded me how great these books are, and yeah, just refreshed them in my mind. So now I am really eager to get to these. So I guess this is where I will leave you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.